Welcome to Education Perspectives. I am your host, Liza Holland. This is a podcast that explores the role of education in our society from a variety of lenses. Education needs to evolve to meet the needs of today and the future. Solving such huge issues requires understanding. Join me as we begin to explore the many perspectives of education. Claudett Edie, a former high school English and science teacher, is not just an educator, but a passionate advocate for project-based learning. With over a decade of experience in PBL, she brings a wealth of knowledge and dedication to her role as a Leestown Middle School library media specialist and a member of Fayette County Public Schools' Deeper Learning team. Her primary focus is to support PBL projects and experiences for the students of Leestown Middle, as well as team teaching, supporting, and coaching teachers as they design PBL experiences in their classrooms. Claudett's commitment to deeper learning and PBL is not just a belief, but a proven strategy for empowering students. She has seen firsthand how PBL can transform students, equipping them with critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and problem-solving skills. Her approach to creating engaging learning experiences that connect classroom content to real-world issues has not only fostered equity and access to a high-quality education for all students, but has also made a significant impact on the Leestown Middle School community. Claudett's innovative contributions have not gone unnoticed. Her achievements include being a 2024 PBL Champion Nominee, winning the 2023 PBLWorksKY Innovator Contest, and being Leestown Middle School's 2023 Teacher of the Year. Recently, she accepted a part-time position as a PBLworks National Faculty member, where she will facilitate PBL 101 workshops for other educators. As a dynamic presenter, Claudett not only facilitates professional development sessions on PBL classroom integration at local, district, and statewide conferences, but also ignites a spark of innovation in every participant. Her master's degree in instructional leadership and middle school science and English education is a testament to her dedication to empowering educators through innovative learning methodologies, leaving a lasting impact on the educational landscape. Hello, Claudett. Thank you so very much for being here for Education Perspectives today.
Thank you. I am very excited to be here, and I'm very grateful that you've asked to have me.
Absolutely. I'm going to kick us off with the question I ask everybody. Tell me, from a 30,000-foot view, why do you think that we as a society invest in education?
Well, I have my honest answer and then the answer that everyone wants to hear. So I want to give you the answer that everybody wants to hear. Why we invest in education, first and foremost, I think we invest in education for economic growth. Sadly, we sometimes view individuals of their worth and how they will contribute to society in the future. Also, sometimes, we feel like it's something that we are churning out. We're churning out this mode, this individual that maybe they're all sort of looking alike. We know what is predictable. And people take comfort in that. They take comfort of knowing that their education was similar to what their children are doing. And then we all have this commonality with our journey through education. And that's important, right? It's important that we do have jobs, that we do create individuals that are compassionate and understand other cultures and just have a lens of lifelong connections, even with others, right? We talk about it's like your first networking, like the people you were in class with in middle school. You're like, I went to middle school with you. And that's your first, just your interactions with people and how to get along with others. I want people to invest in education because I think it's a great way to build students and individuals and foster their curiosity. And also just understanding that maybe we're not all equal in this world and we all have our own challenges. but we can meet you where you are and support you. So just taking that idea of a student who is interested in learning, that child at like 2 or 3 years old, and how they are just want to learn and learn and learn. And how can we invest in education in such a way that we keep that spark in all our students and support families so that they have the tools and the resources that they need so that we're all on a level playing field when we graduate and enter the workforce and contribute. I know that's a roundabout answer.
Honestly, it really resonates with me because it speaks a little to that how this system was created in the first place. I mean, it was built on an industrial model that was to convert farmers into productive factory workers who needed to be compliant and very detail oriented and afraid to speak up and all those kinds of things. And our society has really changed since that model was developed. And the skills that kids need don't necessarily thrive under that model. So that really speaks to me about meeting each child where they are and that whole lifelong learning. I hear more CEOs say, I need people who can learn, unlearn, and relearn. And if you don't keep some of that love of learning, that's really hard to do. So I definitely am more aligned with your vision.
Thank you. I hope that we all turn our focus on fostering individuals and fostering collaborators and just curious people, right? If you could have a student who graduates either high school or college and says, I'm just still so curious and I can't wait to learn more. Like, instead of like, woo, I'm finished with that. I don't have to do that anymore. I mean, sometimes we even hear like adults say, I would never want to go back to school, or I would never want to do that again, or I don't want to go and get an advanced degree. But instead, I would love to be like, I'm hungry. When can I have more? Like that.
Yes.
That's the individual I want to spark and have in my world.
That is totally the ideal, isn't it? So I'm so glad that there are a few of you out there in education that you're guiding light. I love it. I love it. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What drew you to education in the first place?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is where it gets really nerdy. So my family, my grandmother actually was a one-room schoolhouse teacher. So my aunts and my cousins are educators. My parents were not in education, but I always loved to play school. And looking back on it, I was that person who loved to teach my stuffed animals, do the lesson plans, and do the work for them. I did it all. And I remember having like the little Fisher Price schoolhouse and had the magnetic letters on it. And I would like open up this, I was playing school in such a way that I didn't realize I was loving the planning and the experience of the classroom even then. And I can still say until like right now, this moment, I am thinking about that student's experience and trying to plan lessons and support teachers for their school day. And I was doing that as play. And then as I was moved on to college, it's weird because I wasn't going to be in education. I thought I was going to be in psychology, something in psychology. I didn't know exactly what. And I took a career planning class, and my instructor, we had taken these interest exams or like these interviews and all these like quizzes and stuff. And then we had to sit down with the instructor, and she was like, all right, Claudett, it looks like you have the moral values of being a middle school teacher, but you probably could be like in show business, or you could do something like you're on stage. And so I had those two ventures to think about. And I walked away from that. I'm like, okay, middle school education. Okay. I will say that my economics and where I was growing up sort of pigeonholed me being an educator. Now, this is the part where people are going to be like, oh my gosh, maybe, like, do I have regrets going in education? Maybe I feel like my potential was not there. So, like, what I'm talking about is that I had a university in my town. I went to Morehead State University. My family didn't have the money to like send me anywhere. I didn't have a car. My parents would deliver me to the university, come to pick me up later. Sometimes I would have to wait long time at the library until my parents could come and get me. And so just the economics of where I was going to school, also the economics of where I would be employed. So Morehead, it was either going to be a hospital because that's like one of the biggest places that people are employed, or the school system. I didn't see myself having the economics to go to medical school, even though I ended up being a high school science teacher. I feel like if the economics behind my journey was there, I probably would have not gone into education. So when I share that story, I also think about our Eastern Kentucky students and how their experience, their educational experience is so much different than Central Kentucky students. And I'm thinking like very specifically like Northern Kentucky, Lexington area, Louisville area, how just their geographic location limits their opportunities, whether it be summer camps, maybe it's industry that's coming in and where they see themselves employed in the future, that they don't see themselves leaving that area. Maybe they have a strong family tie, they want to stay close by. And so I'm an educator and I feel like I'm a successful educator and this is my blood and my happy spot. But I don't know if that path was my choice as much as it was my circumstance.
I can totally respect that. And I think that that happens for a lot of kids. And I've thought a lot about that dichotomy of teachers come up through education in a very siloed type of a pathway. So they don't ever get exposed to the breadth and depth of all the different types of jobs that are out there. And through no fault of their own, you know? And a lot of times the people who are counseling students, et cetera, maybe they don't know as much as they need to about the breadth and depth of what's available out there. So that's kind of on my radar to find ways that we can introduce kids to possibilities earlier and more often. And, find a way to be able to, in that case, educate the teachers alongside the students.
Yeah. So Liza, you hit like something that's really on my radar right now, and it's my passion. When I'm working with teachers and we're designing learning experiences and we're looking at real life products that these students are working towards, one of the questions I will ask them, where do we see this in the real world? So if the students are writing an essay, when would this essay appear in the real world? What does that look like in the real world? What does it look like in industry? And so sometimes that pushback is, that's startling because we have this preconceived notion of what writing looks like in school, what writing looks like in an assessment, but then we are not helping students write for their careers, write for what's out there. And if you don't know, like you just said, if you don't really know what industry's out there or what a job looks like outside of school, because you go to school, you go to college to be a teacher, and then you go right back to school. So you don't know what a different day looks like or a different interaction looks like. So yes, students need those experiences, those field trips, those experts coming into the classroom, but also, like you said, Liza, is that teachers need a chance to have those opportunities, like no fault of their own, but we need to know what another day looks like, what another job looks like.
Absolutely. And you can never underestimate the number of employers that tell me, my young people can't write a coherent email. And I'm like, really? They could probably write an essay.
I don't literally, like when I was saying that, I was thinking an email, just composing an email or just composing a summary of what happened. Like I know a lot of times in the medical field, they have to summarize, or even like if you're working independently, or who your audience is, like understanding who you are writing for. You're not writing for a teacher. Like this is the only time you will be writing for a teacher. You are writing for multiple perspectives. So just like your language, and I think Grammarly, I use Grammarly all the time. I have the premium, and it'll say, do you want an informal tone, a casual tone, an educated tone? And so like students have to know that, and like who are they writing for?
Absolutely. And I'm hoping it's interesting watching the dynamics of the arrival of AI into schools and how incredibly worried people are. But I imagine it's not a whole lot different than when the internet first came around. How do we do this? How do we control it? How do we do this? And so I love the way that it could possibly be a good tutor for students to say, okay, rewrite this in an informal tone, rewrite this in a professional tone, just so that they could understand and see the difference right in front of them.
Yeah.
So,
Well, so speaking of Grammarly, I feel like I'm like not advertising for Grammarly, but Grammarly will also, like, since I have the premium, it will even like say, you know, give suggestions, and like what does your audience, like your audience may need you to explain more about this. The reader needs to know more about this. And so it does sort of prompt you, because it can AI only gives what you put in.
yes,
So if I didn't give those details, the AI is asking for that. So I really think we should embrace AI myself. It is here. It's not going anywhere. So let's teach students how to use it.
well, I tell you what, you're doing so many neat and innovative things over there at Leestown, and I have to give you a huge shout out. The showcase night just blew me away. It was such a well thought out, well done event, and I learned so much from the students that night. I just rock star. Good job.
Well, it was a team effort. It was a progress of teachers saying yes and administration seeing that our students have a voice and they can showcase their work. And I'm sure, like you said, like when you walked around, students wanted to show what they had made, they wanted to share. So it was really nice to see teachers having work that can be shared, student work that can be shared. That's a journey, right? So as a teacher, like, hey, we've got this night coming up. We want you to showcase deeper learning. We want to showcase students communicating and collaborating and having a forward-thinking product that is out there that you're going to present. And then as a teacher, you have to reflect, what have I done that meets that criteria?
Yeah.
Or what can I do to put students out there in first? What can I do that's not a handout? What can I do that's not in Google Drive and just stays in Google Drive, right? So there were a lot of teachers that stepped up and presented what they were doing in class. So when I say they presented, their students were presenting what was happening. So you have to be brave, right? Because that student is your product, right? That student and their success and the challenges that they face and their reflective comments about their learning is your product. So that's scary, because you are sharing that with the world. You're sharing that with visitors and family members. And I really appreciated everyone who said yes. And we grew. I mean, we had 102 students that stayed that night to showcase, and they were so happy about, they were like, but I need to go to so and so and present, and I need to, and they were coming around and like sharing with each other. So yeah, there was a huge win. And that started like last year, and then our showcases were this year. So big shout out to Mr. Gibson, Joe Gibson, our principal, and our leadership team, Haley Bromagen, Seth Miller. They were the people who were knocking on doors and like, hey, what do you have? Or you should be showcasing this, and giving shout outs on our digital signage all year to these students and these teachers. And even though we were sharing out during the school day, having those evenings set aside for the community to come in to celebrate students was very powerful. And we plan on doing that again this coming year. And we're also going to be partnering with a community member to have even more focus. If the teachers were maybe thinking that maybe they didn't have, a lot of times when you do project-based learning, your final product, a lot of times you are doing that for someone else, right? So you have an audience, you have someone, that empathy piece, that you're creating something beyond your classroom. And there were teachers that didn't have those connections to community members to reach out. So a lot of times when students were presenting, it was just still in that fishbowl in the classroom, right? Or down the hall, or to another teacher, or to an administrator. So we're hoping that we're going to have community members or community or a partnership, so that we are creating a product for people, individuals outside the school. So that's our growth for next year, is to take PBL on a larger scale outside. So to build that empathy, to build that knowledge of others, that knowledge of community and community support and outreach.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I love the intentionality around giving the shout outs and actually having administrators help by knocking on doors to say, can you participate in this? Because that's the way, early adopters, probably like you and I, it's, that's a great challenge and it's so neat. But there's a lot of people who are, gee, I don't know I could do that. And we have to empower our teachers just as much as we empower our students to be able to do that, and provide some scaffolding of sorts. Maybe we need to find some ways to be able to solicit new partners and figure out how to do those matchups and all that kind of a thing. But I think that is a fabulous growth plan.
Yeah, we're hoping. Yeah. So that's like we're talking about, like scaffolding, student work, like scaffolding teacher, and letting them know what they are doing is impactful, and what they're doing gives students voice, and maybe they're not thinking that it's worthy of showcase.
Mm-hmm.
And it is. And I think we are our hardest critics. Like at the end of the day, the teachers reflecting, they're always looking at what they can do better. And so we always feel like we're always not meeting the mark. And that sometimes that guard that we put up is what keeps us from taking the next step, and also like keeping ourselves from like showcasing student work sometimes, because we feel like it's not good enough. But it's doesn't have to be distinguished. It doesn't have to be proficient. And these are all assessment languages that I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
But has the student grown? Can the student reflect from the moment they just started their project to where they are now? What changed? And how does that make me feel as I move through those struggles? And it's okay to struggle. It's okay to recognize that reading is hard for me. It is okay to recognize that I didn't understand it. I understand it a little bit better now, and I still need more practice with it. And giving permission that is the journey, and that is where we are. That's why we have students move for many, many, 13 years with us because of that progression. So highlighting that and, stop waiting for perfection
Yes.
before you let students share what they've learned.
Don't let perfection be the enemy of good. And, that's the other thing that I think our system really needs to examine is that, out in the real world, people fail all the time. And they do it once and then they're like, well, that really wasn't quite good enough. So let's try it again and let's do it this way. And that type of, dedication to an iterative process that can continue to grow doesn't really gel really well with our you got to get an A culture. And I'm really glad to hear you say that, because that I actually had another guest on last year, and he is a professor at MIT, and he wrote a book called Iterate. And he said, we fail here all day long, every day.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? That with confidence from an MIT professor, we need a little more of that infusion in there, that it's okay and it's going to get better and you're going to get better.
Yeah. And so like if anyone's like listening and they're thinking about PBL and they're thinking about their showcase, one of the things that I have to really, really beg you to do is not select your best behaved class, your best A class, your advanced class to do a PBL. All students can do that, and you don't have to select your best behaved student, your most articulate student to get up and share when that night happens. Like all students should share their learning journey, and creating and scaffolding those conversations is very easy to do. So we had our first showcase in December. Students had stickers and they could actually say, ask me about my biggest struggle. Ask me about what I loved about this project. Ask me about what I would do next time. So the student already knew the answer. And so when the person came up and spoke to them, they were ready to share. So you didn't have to have a student that had everything like, oh, this was great. This is what I did. And I was awesome at it the entire time. And I had all these things that were advantages in my life that allowed this to take place. So there's that perfection, right? We put up the perfect student for the showcase, but all our students are perfect, and they all are perfect in their learning journey, just embracing that journey.
It's funny when we move to more hands-on kind of career-connected learning like this, a lot of times the best students are some of the ones that have the challenges with it. They're like, I've got the routine here. I know how to take a test. I know how to do that. But putting into the practical application space, sometimes you'll find that some of your best students are actually some that you thought were the worst, but maybe they just needed to learn a little differently. That's so cool.
They have to be given a chance for a voice. So when you are doing PBL, when the student is able to choose their audience, when they're able to choose their final product, and there's time built into the day with shoulder partners, and they are discussing back and forth, and they're able to be leaders in their small groups, and they're able to give feedback during the school day, and they're listening to one another. That gives that value to all learners. So you don't have to be a standout to be part of a learning community.
Tell us, do you have a favorite story or memory about your work in education so far?
So I do have one that goes way back, and it is not necessarily student-based. It is my journey-based.
Awesome.
So when I started out as a new teacher, I was hired as a speech coach to get my foot in the door. And then I was an high school English teacher. I had a double major, English and science, and I really wanted to teach science. And what happened about a couple years into my employment, a science position opened up, but it was only for like a couple of classes. So I was still teaching English and I was teaching science. So I taught English at the beginning of the school day, and then I had a couple of science classes at the end of the school day. And to help me, the administration, I don't even know how it happened, but I was given a mentor, and the mentor was Arv Allen. Arv Allen was an amazing physics teacher, and he taught freshman physics and chemistry, just like the classes that I was assigned to. I was assigned 2 of those classes. And one of those classes during my workday, I was able to go into Mr. Arv Allen's classroom and observe him. So I would walk in, had taught English all morning, and then in the afternoon, my first class was to go observe him. And he was teaching the same science class that I was going to be teaching after that. I walked in with my notebook, and he was an amazing teacher, hands-on, extremely brilliant. He was top of his field. He would go present at conferences. He wrote grants and got grants for equipment. And he was my mentor. And I was able to watch his classroom management style. I was able to look at his lesson. I guess we would call those professional learning communities now, like he would, right? But he was my mentor, and someone in leadership, whether it's department chair, principal, saw in me that I had the potential to be a good science teacher, a great science teacher, but I needed support. And I needed mentorship. So I really like Arv Allen and whoever in administration like came up with that idea that I was able to not teach, I'm doing air quotes, not teach one period, but to be mentored every day that school year by Mr. Allen. Like, I want that for other teachers because I could talk to him and ask why he did things a certain way. He could model great teaching in real time for me. Everybody should have that. So that's my favorite memory, and the fact that that's how I grew. And that is a lot of my role as a library media specialist at Leestown. I'm not your typical librarian. This space is used as a model lab a lot of times. I get to guide teachers and coach teachers and model for teachers, good teaching, deeper learning teaching, reflective teaching. And that all started with me needing to learn myself.
Oh, I love that. And now you're paying it forward. That's pretty magical. My next question is kind of surrounding the biggest challenges and obstacles that you face. And I know that time, honestly, has come up in our conversations together about, maybe we need to rethink our school day. Maybe we need to, to do things a little differently. Tell me about the challenges that you face and what your dream day might look like.
Well, yes. Our profession the structure is outdated and maybe not relevant to what needs to happen. My gut tells me that we need to allow teachers to have space to plan and to learn. And one planning period a day. A middle school here at Fayette County, and we actually have 2 planning periods. Now, those 2 planning periods, one is a collaborative support staff and planning period. So it's not really a planning period, but it's a built-in time for looking at data and looking at support services that wrap around students. But then you have another 50 minutes that is your dedicated planning period. And elementary school teachers, they even probably have less. And high school teachers, they only have one planning period, and they may have multiple classes that they're teaching. Most middle school teachers only have one prep, which is nice. But Planning takes time, reflection takes time, collaboration takes time. And we are asking teachers to do their job without having the time to do that. If you are a teacher and you are listening, you know, you get up, you wake up, and you're already thinking about the day, and you plan, you work before work, you work during work, you work after work, and then on weekends, you force yourself maybe to have one day that you're not working, but Sunday, you're back to work. And for those teachers who say, no, I'm not going to do that, I don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you do it. I've not been able to do that to meet the needs of your students and to give feedback and management, even if you're following Catlin Tucker, and Catlin Tucker has some great ideas on how to grade and assess in a way that you're giving quick feedback, important feedback, but that still takes time.
Mm-hmm.
We also are not, some districts are moving away from having autonomy on what PD, professional learning, their teachers are getting. And I understand the idea of streamlining and everyone being on the same page. And if you've adopted a curriculum, you do need to know that curriculum and you need to like build in like timing and a plan for all that. But also individuals, teachers need individual PD because they know where their weaknesses and strengths are. We need time for allow teachers to be leaders within their school, within the district, because teachers are in the trenches and they know what works, what doesn't work. And they also need to be unsiloed and so that they are speaking to one another and helping each other out by creating experiences for their students. So it's just, we can restructure. We have the box, and I think like a box is empty, right? You've got a box and everything is like in there, and you could, let's move it around a little bit and like restructure our day so that students also, I mean, let's talk about students. They sit for most of the day. They are not really able to move out. Like in middle school, we don't have breaks. We don't have like, they don't go outside and like shake it off like in elementary school. And they're not allowed to talk a lot of times. And it's just, and you go in the cafeterias and kids are told to like, you're being too loud. Well, yeah, it is loud because it's a small room and we're all, the noise is loud, but that's the only time they get to have some kind of social, and they don't know how to act around each other. And so when we ask students like, why did you do that? Well, they don't know. They don't have a lot of experience navigating conflict. Conflict is difficult. And so if you don't have time to talk to other people and talk things through and just be for a moment, right? They get up and they take their stuff to another class, and then it's a total new subject. And how do they even wrap their head around? Like looking back, like I don't even know how the kids do it.
I don't either. When I go to conferences these days, I'm like, okay, after 20 minutes, unless it's a really engaging speaker, I'm already multitasking. So, and we blame the kids for trying to do that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And honestly, you've answered a lot of my next question, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to add to it if you'd like. What would you like decision makers to know?
Well, I want decision makers to know that they have the opportunity to be innovative, and they have the opportunity to change the system.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a congressman at your state level, you have the opportunity to vote in such a way that you have listened to educators. You have the opportunity to step inside a school system, to observe, to take place, like take time out of your day and see if you could like create a lesson or navigate a day. Like, you have the choice to be a student in our schools. And I would encourage you to take that time and gain the perspective of a journey that everyone in your state goes through. So whether that student is homeschooled, they're still facing the challenges of completing assignments and meeting the expectations of assessments, or like most of our students who go into public schools, like, what does that journey look like? And do you think it needs to be changed? Do you think it could improve? And how could we do that? Would you take time out of your busy day to listen to innovative teachers and leaders? And looking back on our assessment and how many assessments we are giving our students daily, it's insane how many assessments our students are completing. And going back to our conversation at the beginning, as a district leader, what type of student do you want to look back on to have created? Do you want a communicator? Do you want an engaged citizen? Do you want an empowered learner? And do you want a productive, not worker, but maybe a productive collaborator? So, like, just listening and taking time to not assume that the students that are in our schools today have to go through the same journey that you went through.
That is excellent, excellent advice. Thank you so much for being a part of Education Perspectives, Claudett. I could talk to you all day.
Oh, I know. I could too.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Education Perspectives. Feel free to share your thoughts on our Facebook page. Let us know which education perspectives you would like to hear or share. Please subscribe and share with your friends.